We already broke down the top 50 starting pitchers for the rest of the season, and now it's time to do the same for hitters. These are going to be my top 50 offensive players, regardless of position, going forward. And again, remember, this is rest of season, so what they've done so far, the first quarter of the season, yeah, it matters, but it's not all that matters. Well, currently, I've got the top 2 spots locked up by Dodgers. Shouldn't really be a big surprise. Who's number 1? It's Shohei Ohtani. Really not much explanation required here. He's just a stud. Doesn't have to worry about pitching every 5th, 6th day either. So seems to me that helps also being in a loaded lineup, followed by Mookie Betts, number 2. And number 3, another 5 category stud, Bobby Witt Jr. Definitely looked like a smart pick early. Was he worthy of a first round pick? Absolutely. But what about the current home run leader? That's Kyle Tucker. Was mostly a first rounder in fantasy drafts, but did anybody think that he might wind up having his best season yet and leapfrog some of these other players? Well, let's see how far he keeps it going. Now, you might say he could belong higher on this list. I guess that's possible. It doesn't really matter the position here. I'm not taking that eligibility into account. Look, I do see that the power has jumped up 18 home runs right now, but the speed has taken a slight downtick, only 9 steals. Let's see if he finishes with 30 steals again this year. And the average is also down a little bit to 266. Okay, I'm just finding reasons to nitpick here. Kyle Tucker is just an absolute stud. But what about Julio at number 5? Look, I know a lot of J-Rod owners very disappointed. Couple of home runs just in the past week. Hasn't done it for you. Can he possibly still be one of the top 5 players in the league going forward? Of course he can. Another reminder, last year, though he went 30-30 pretty easily, most of that production did come in the second half. He hit 60 points higher in the second half almost, and 19 of his home runs were after the All-Star break in fewer plate appearances. The year before that, he also did show a second half surge. So do I expect the best is yet to come? Yes, I do. It's still a good time to buy low on him. There's no reason to doubt him. And down at number 9, I got Elly De La Cruz. I get that the stolen base leader is extremely valuable. It's really interesting for me. I kind of struggle with how to place him versus Fernando Tatis because aside from the steal totals, which clearly De La Cruz does have the lead and will continue to have the lead. In fact, he'll probably wind up leading the majors in steals at this point. But Tatis and De La Cruz otherwise have very similar stats. Both right now, disappointing batting average in the 240s. They both have exactly 9 home runs. Everything else looks almost identical. But the difference is Tatis is actually underachieving on his XBA by quite a bit, and I expect him to hit closer to 280, not 290. I fully expect De La Cruz to hit 240s. Tatis has much more power, hasn't quite fully gotten there yet this season. I think De La Cruz will be fine, but I expect Tatis to beat him in that category too. But the steals is the big difference maker, so I am putting De La Cruz over him. But I really don't think that by the time it's all said and done, there's going to be a big gap, which is why I had them right next to each other. Now let's get to the next 10 on the list. Trey Turner, well, hasn't quite made the top 10. That hamstring injury has kept him sidelined. That's part of the reason, although he is coming back very soon. Look, the speed is not an issue. He's got 10 steals. I don't think the hammy will bother him. But the power hasn't really shown up. 2 home runs only? You can't really complain when the guy is hitting 343 and stealing bases and is in one of the best lineups in the National League. Look, Turner may not be a true power hitter anymore, but I think he can get you at the very least in the teens, close to 20 home runs. But all said, I'll take what I can get from him the rest of the season. Still one of the top dozen players offensively. Now, a Dodger who did not make the top 10 was Freddie Freeman, and there's a very easy explanation for this. He stopped stealing bases. Now, he is still one of the best pure hitters in the game. The batting average is great. The power has been okay this year, but of course, runs and RBIs. But where are the steals? Only 1 after stealing 23 a year ago? Now, the sprint speed is down, and it's only the 23rd percentile. But honestly, that's not a big deal because he's never really had elite sprint speed. In fact, the last 2 years, including last year when he stole 23 bases, it was in the 30s. So it's not like there's a big loss of speed here. He's just not running as much. Maybe because now they have Shohei Ohtani and Teoscar Hernandez, and they just really don't need to steal as many bases. Whatever the reason, I mean, that's a little bonus that you aren't getting anymore from first base. but still, we cannot put Freddie Freeman any lower than this. And then I'll just quickly say, when you have guys like Jordan Alvarez, Corey Seager, and Rafael Devers all coming off of basically disappointing starts to the season, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. These guys all could and should be maybe even higher on this list. We'll see, but again, zero concerns here. The only reason I don't have them higher is because these guys don't get you steals, but there's nothing to suggest that these guys are going to have a down season in any way. So this is just right. I keep thinking maybe I'm higher on Anthony Volpe than everybody else is, and then I keep looking at his stats, and I keep thinking, why isn't everybody else higher on Anthony Volpe? Let's do the head-to-head comparison between Albies and Volpe. Right now, Volpe's got him beat in average. He's got twice as many home runs, 6 compared to only 3 for Albies. Definitely the edge in steals, 11, only 3 for Albies. Sure, Albies has 2 more RBIs, but Volpe's scoring a ton more runs. And honestly, the Yankees offense is better than the Braves so far this year, and I think it's safe to say that might continue now that Acuna is gone. Volpe completely fixed the issue from last year where his average was bad all year. He was just trying too hard to lift the ball. He's not that kind of hitter. He does have some natural raw power, but he's not a power hitter, and he was trying to be probably too impressive in his rookie season. Look, everything is in place for him. I think Volpe is just a fantasy stud now and for a long time. And then quickly just want to say, if you got Adley Rutschman, you felt like you were reaching maybe, worried about that just to try to get a good offensive catcher, well, you did a smart thing because he isn't just the best offensive catcher. He's one of the best offensive players in the game. As we get ready to close out May, he's hitting .299, 10 home runs, 37 RBIs, and that ranks him in top 15 in the majors. The only catcher even close to him in terms of production is William Contreras, who I have just after him in the ranks. Now, we look at 21 through 30, there's a lot of Braves in here. And, well, let's talk Braves. We know Acuna is not on this list anymore. What is this offense going to look like without him? I mean, it's not like they haven't done this before, but still, every single player other than Marcell Ozuna has basically underachieved this year compared to last year. Putting Ozuna down at 25 almost feels disrespectful. I mean, he's kind of carried this offense in stretches, hitting .308, 16 home runs, and 49 RBIs, among the league leaders in all those categories. I don't expect any sort of major negative regression or anything, but I do think that he will at some point maybe hit a little ice patch. And I do have Austin Riley ahead of him because I expect Austin Riley to start looking like himself at some point too, and his upside really should be higher than that of Ozuna. And as far as Michael Harris and Matt Olson, again, I feel like I talked about all of these guys at one point on the Buy Low or the Panic videos, and I will say I do think that for the rest of this season, we'll start to see something closer to what we would expect of them. I don't expect Matt Olson, though, to finish with 50-plus home runs, so that's why I got him down there. Now, when we get to the 30s, you have some guys who are maybe a little bit underachieving this year but should get back to things. Where do you put someone like Royce Lewis, who has barely even played, in fact, got all of, I think, 2 plate appearances before getting injured? Yeah, there's some trust issues here with Royce, but I will have to say, obviously he's on a rehab assignment right now, should be coming back any day. I'm going to mostly stick to my preseason assessment of him is I think that he should be, and definitely could be, a top 25 fantasy player. But let's see him first actually stay on the field for a prolonged period of time, which has always been the issue with Lewis. It's not a matter of talent. So I'm still buying into him. I still think the talent is there, and it's not anything that should be hampered by this injury. But again, let's see it first. And then Randy Arozarena. Oh, man. Are we still buying into him? I can't put him too low. I do think that he's going to turn things around, but at the same time, it's not like we can just assume he's going to be one of the elite stars in the game when he's this bad for this long. Now, at the same time, I will say with the Arozarena, what he's supposed to give you is help across the board, but he's not a guy who's ever going to be in the cards to get you 40-plus home runs, 40 steals, elite individual category help. He's someone who should help you across most, if not all, categories, but he's killing you in batting average. I think he gets better, but again, only to some extent. So that's why I got to keep him at least top 40, but I don't expect him to have one of his better seasons, not even just from here on out. Now, Josh Naylor is a guy who's been top 10 in both home runs and RBIs. A great season. This guy who's still young despite having a few seasons of experience with 15 home runs and 41 RBIs. I mean, he's been one of the most important pieces for that Cleveland offense. I think you're going to continue to see that production. He is legit. The only thing is the batting average isn't really what you want, but still, this is an elite slugger. He's really outproducing guys like Pete Alonso who are way above him. Maybe I should have Naylor a little bit higher. And similarly, some people will say, Alec Bohm, why the disrespect here? This is somebody who's right now third in the league in RBIs and eighth in batting average among qualified hitters. Well, with him, really the only thing is I do recall from last year, he also got off to a really scorching hot start first month of the season and then cooled down big time. He only wound up hitting .274 with 20 home runs. I do think he will continue to drive in runs. There's no doubt there. His place in that great stacked lineup and having Trey Turner back will only help. But at the same time, I feel like there is a limit to his home run power because he's a little bit more of a line drive hitter. So, look, I like Bohm. If you got him, I'm not saying to flip him or anything like that, but I'm not assuming that he's going to continue at this current pace. And then the big question here, Corbin Carroll, is he going to continue at his current pace? What do you do with him? You might even be wondering, did I really just stick him in here just because I had to mention him and, couldn't ignore him in part of this top 50? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Look, I think it's too soon to give up on him. Is his shoulder, is that what's bothering him? Is there some sort of a mechanical issue here? Everybody's trying to figure it out, and we don't really know. I will say it's too much talent to give up on. He was at least still in bases early in the season. The speed is still there. So, man, I just hope that something changes. But again, until we see it, we can't put him over guys who are actually producing. And this is why we talk about things like the rest of the season and project the rankings, because last year is over. You can't think about what a guy did. It's what do you think he's going to do? This is why I'm constantly giving you weekly waiver wire picks, stashes, and beat the breakout, and advice to keep you on top of things. That's how you win in fantasy baseball, is always keeping on top of things, being up to date. With that in mind, check out the latest video, or if you haven't caught my top 50 starting pitcher rest of the season rankings, you can do that now.